Hello and welcome to Lean Yak. My name is Vin and I'm a certified carnivore coach at MeatRx.com. Today I'll be talking about the differences between the carnivore diet and the ketogenic diet and coming to some kind of conclusion at the end as to which one's better and why. So let's start off with just basic definitions. The carnivore diet is a meat-based diet, or let's just say an animal product-based diet. It is about eating purely from animal kingdom, primarily whole foods, if possible, and well-sourced foods. But it's pretty much beef, chicken, pork, lamb, game, anything like that. Also, because it's meat-based, it technically includes things like milk and cheese. However, if you do read guides such as Dr. Sean Baker's Carnivore Diet book, they'll kind of hint to you towards excluding things like dairy, etc., for various reasons. But that's outside the scope of this particular video. I'll go into them in a different video. That's the carnivore diet. It's very simple. In terms of like overall profile, it is pretty much a zero carb diet, which means it would technically be something that used to be considered a ketogenic diet. There is a marked difference between the two for a primary reason, and I'll get to that in a second. But essentially, it is a zero carb diet because you're only eating meat, and that's pretty much it. It's very simple in terms of definitions. It's simple to follow, sometimes difficult to execute, depending on your situation. Now, that's the carnivore diet. The ketogenic diet is something a little bit different. Traditionally, as popularized by something like the Atkins diet, it is like carnivore. It is a meat, again, traditionally. This has changed since originally, but it's a meat-based diet with 25 grams or less of carbohydrates per day. That's the original Atkins diet. It existed pre-Atkins. Actually, it's existed for a long, long time. I think it was a letter of corpulence or letter to corpulence. I think it was the 1800s or something. I forget, but I'm bad with specific dates and stuff. But the idea is it's been around for a long time, popularized really by Atkins, and it was initial way of thinking, a meat-based diet with very low carbs. The reason for the low carbs is to keep something called insulin, which is a hormone in your body, down. Because the core concept of the ketogenic diet is that calories don't matter as much as hormones. That's the core statement of the ketogenic diet. So it doesn't matter. So even though it matters how much you eat, what matters more is what you're eating in terms of keeping you healthy and keeping you at a healthy weight, or keeping weight on or off. So the way to do that was by eating in a way that you control this hormone called insulin by keeping it low. And the way to do that is to keep your carbohydrates low. What is a carbohydrate? It is pretty much things like pasta, bread, rice, things. A lot of traditional kind of foods involve pizza, anything that has a base on it, anything that has something that even looks like bread on it, many vegetables and fruits. Those food products all contain carbohydrates, and you want to keep carbohydrates low. The list goes on and on. Sugary drinks, etc., like sauces. But the idea is you look at the back of those packages if they come in packaging. Whole foods generally don't come in packaging, but in that case, you'd be like, don't eat fruit. Don't eat most vegetables, don't eat vegetables unless they're green. You know, these are like the kind of guidelines that would have been given with a ketogenic diet originally. So only eat green vegetables, no fruits, no pastas, no breads, etc. And if you're eating processed foods, look at the back of the can and determine, read the number on there. Look at how many servings, look at how many grams per serving of carbohydrates you're doing, log it, keep that number less than 25 per day. Since then, the definition of keto has fluctuated because some people don't need to keep it under 25. They can go a bit higher. And also, people essentially by process and time and self-testing, etc., have also found that you can be vegetarian on keto. You can also be vegan on keto, because it really does just depend on the types of foods you eat and the total amount of carbohydrates per day and your personal tolerance to carbohydrates. You can probably do vegetarian or maybe even vegan keto close to the original Atkins recommendation, which is 25 grams or less. But I bet a lot of them are sitting up at the 30 to 50 range. But because they're what's called low glycemic, i.e. they don't spike insulin, because remember the ketogenic diet is about insulin. Because they're low glycemic, then you could probably go a little bit higher than the 25 and still stay in what's called ketosis. The definition of ketosis I won't go into in this video, but the idea is keep insulin low by eating low carbs. So those are the differences between the ketogenic diet and the carnivore diet, at least overall definitions. The ketogenic diet, eat in a way that keeps your carbs low. That could be vegetables, that could be whatever. As long as your carbs are low, then and you stay in a state called ketosis, outside the case of this video, but let's just say as long as your total carbs a day is under 25, I should say that because that's pretty much certain at that point, you'll be in a state called ketosis, and by that way you'll manage your diet. On the other side, you have the carnivore diet, which is eat animal-based products. Simple. Okay. So those are the definitions between the two. Now, in terms of them versus each other, my stipulation to you would be, what is the purpose, was your goal in eating either way? And that would determine which way is probably better for you in terms of compliance and in terms of just overall long-term outcomes if you can't comply. So what I mean by that is, if your goal is weight loss, and say, for example, you cannot possibly give up pasta, supposedly. Like I actually believe anyone can give up pasta if they're sufficiently motivated. But say, for example, you don't want to give up pasta. Well, there's very low carbohydrate pastas. So you can have a ketogenic diet. You can eat a ketogenic diet if you use the right pastas and replacements for rice, like cauliflower rice, etc. And if that is the only way you can comply to a low carbohydrate dietary protocol, like keto or carnivore, if that's the only way you can comply by using those alternatives, and using that like your Sherpa into being low carb, and then hoping the hormonal effects will do most of the work for you and let you drop your weight or fix whatever hormonal issues you have, that could do it. And it did. It worked for me. It worked for me for a couple of years. I have actually no beef, pun intended, with the ketogenic diet. But now what I would say is the difference between that and carnivore is kind of a subtle one. In fact, I would say it's a very subtle one. With a ketogenic diet, what you find is, though it is easier in the outset to stick to because you can use replacements and all that kind of stuff, it is, unless you're monitoring your blood ketone levels or you are incredibly strict with your monitoring and incredibly strict with your food diaries, it is so easy to just not be following the diet by accident. You could accidentally overestimate your carbs on a given day, and then suddenly you're kind of bubbling at a higher level of ketosis. So a higher level of carbohydrate in your bloodstream, etc., and you're not in ketosis, which means you're not really actually doing keto. And that's closer to a low carb diet rather than keto itself. So it's very easy to slip because, say, for example, you're used to buying a particular low carb sauce and you use a little bit too much of it on a given low carb pizza. Then suddenly, instead of 25 grams, you're at 35 grams, and suddenly you're not in the state of ketosis. Now, for many people, that's fine because most people aren't too metabolically damaged. But if you're highly metabolically damaged, something that's probably signified by being obese, for example, if you're obese, I'd argue that you're probably highly metabolically damaged, or at least you're likely insulin resistant. If you're one of those people and your goal is to lose weight, you can't afford to be doing little slip-ups like that. Why? Not because it'll kill you. It's not like you're going to explode. But what will happen is your progress will either slow down to a crawl or stall completely. And one of the leading reasons why anyone stops a diet or anyone stops eating a particular way is if they lose motivation. And one of the reasons for losing motivation is stopping your progress, hitting a stall, losing that sense of forward motion. That sense of forward motion is so critical to any lifestyle change. If you're running every day, if you're trying to go for if you're going to aim for a 10K run and you're starting at 0, you start your first day you're walking, the second day you're running 50 meters, the third day you're running 100 meters, etc. As you slowly get new personal bests, that encourages you to keep going forward. But with the ketogenic diet, because it's pretty easy actually to slip up, and slowly what they call carb creep, which slowly introduce more carbs pretty much by accident or just like minor errors here and there. If you're highly insulin resistant, you'll hit a stall like a brick wall. Like you'll feel like nothing you're doing is working. Nothing's changed. You haven't done anything different, but for some reason I can't keep losing weight or fixing my metabolism, whatever you're trying to do. And that can feel like total crap. And it happened to me for months, maybe even in one case, like half a year. I kept trying different things, again, counting calories. And it turned out that what it was is just like, I just wasn't as insulin sensitive as I was hoping I'd be. Like I was trying to push it to 30 grams, which isn't much higher than 25, but at 30 for me, I was stalled or gaining weight. 35 grams, I was gaining weight. And that's how particular eating a ketogenic lifestyle can be. On the flip side, there's the carnivore diet. And the carnivore diet, well, you're guaranteed to be under 25 grams a day. Now, you won't necessarily be in ketosis because protein actually spikes insulin, which is that hormone we were talking about before. However, the rest of the day, like, yes, it spikes insulin, but it doesn't spike it for long. And also, there's many reasons why the hypothesis that protein would make you kick you out of ketosis and be totally different to keto is not complete. It's not full. It's not a definite factor that eating a lot of protein will kick you out of ketosis and therefore you won't lose weight. Why do I know this? Because I ate 3,000 calories of just protein, i.e. just steak, beef, salt, and water, was mince and steak, for about 3 months, 3,000 calories a day, and was losing weight the whole time. So I was eating more than I normally do. And I'm not saying you can eat an infinite amount, but in my case, I was eating more than I normally do every single day, only meat, so a heck of a lot of protein, and I was losing weight. So, also to add to that, I did test my blood ketones, and I was in ketosis in the morning, and quite a bit of ketosis. I would be in like about 1.5 if anyone's familiar with keto. 1.5 millimolar blood, I think it's beta hydroxybutyrate it tests. But yes. So blood ketones was pretty high, triple the minimum. So carnivore is it has many of the same benefits of keto because it still plays to that insulin hypothesis, keeping insulin low. It's also much easier to stay in a kind of beneficial state, but also the compliance level, if you can get over the fact that you don't have pasta, etc. in your diet, means that you don't have to think about it. There's no tracking involved, especially in the initial stages of carnivore. If you just want to fix your health and maybe lose a couple of kilos rather than just like get shredded. If you don't want to get from the outset, if you're 200 pounds, you're not getting shredded in a month. So put shredded aside for a second. So if you're just aiming to fix your health and maybe lose a little bit of weight, you can eat ad libitum. as much as you want meat-based products, not including milk and stuff for now, but just like meats, fish, poultry, game, etc. And you will keep losing weight, and there'll be no adherence problems and no tracking and none of that stuff. It's easy mode for at least initial stages. And if you look at those two differences between the ketogenic diet and the carnivore diet, aside from the fact that you can't do the carnivore diet as a vegan or vegetarian, I've put the strength of the two firmly in the carnivore camp. Because again, for me, the most important thing is outcomes, and in the initial stages, that is progress. Like the best way to view it is, what's your goal? How are you progressing to that goal? And say you eat keto and make a few errors here and there, your progress will either be wishy-washy or non-existent. If you eat carnivore, you'll most likely see definitive steps towards your progress the entire time, which means you'll stay motivated, you'll see outcomes quicker, and above all, you'd have the other effects, but benefits of carnivore, which keto doesn't necessarily have. And this, now we get to probably my favorite reason I'd recommend carnivore over keto and why I think it's a better way of eating. Let's not call it a diet. Let's just say way of eating, because that's what it is. The difference between the two is that insulin is not necessarily bad. And this might be controversial in some circles, but whatever. This is my opinion. This is what I've seen. This is what I've experienced. This is what I have learned from viewing people and watching other people's progress, etc. Insulin is one of the core problems. Chronically elevated insulin is one of the core problems of modern health. True, I agree with that. However, should insulin always be rock bottom? That's a different question entirely. What I mean by that is, eating carnivore, say for example you eat one meal a day, you'll have a pretty substantial spike of insulin from that meal. But that spike of what does insulin actually do? And you can look it up. That's not really the purpose of the video, but one of the things it does is control fat in and out of the fat cell, which is why we want to minimize it, which is why you have the ketogenic diet, etc. But another thing it does is it builds or programs your body to build. In one way that's potentially bad because it builds by gaining fat, but another way it's good, or another way it functions that is good, is that it builds muscle. Having a spike of insulin lets you build muscle like crazy. And in that way, I love carnivore. Because if you eat right in specific ways that are out of the depth of this particular video, if you eat right with carnivore, you can spike your insulin in such a way that your strength goals, your strength progress, and your like body composition, real like ideals and maintenance of body composition and all that kind of stuff is, in my opinion and from my experience, I don't have science to back this up, but what I've seen, and I'll put money on it. Your ability to build muscle or retain muscle is heightened because you have these hits of insulin throughout the day. They're not large hits. They're not gigantic, like I had a bowl of pasta hits, but they're hits. And if you time them right or in specific ways, as people like Dr. Sean Baker show, you can gain muscle, gain strength, progress towards your strength goals, progress towards your fitness goals whilst cutting, losing weight, or whatever else you want to do. And that is the huge difference I've noticed between the carnivore diet and the ketogenic diet, i.e. not all insulin is bad. Insulin doesn't need to be rock bottom all day. And if you time things right, you can keep insulin low for the majority of time. Again, you're eating zero carb on carnivore. But you also have insulin when you need it, when you want to build or maintain things like muscle, which is quintessentially important to health. One of the main things that I think the ketogenic diet misses is that it focuses too much on weight loss and not enough on health. And that's not necessarily like not everyone in keto is like that. Like let's just say I was keto for 5 years. A lot of the keto community is totally switched on and know exactly what they're doing. They're awesome. They know how to cyclic carb load and a bunch of other things. There's a lot of ways to account for this factor. But on carnivore, it's all part of the diet. Like you can eat beef once a day, go out lifting 4 hours later, come back pumped from your lifts, wake up lighter. And that has happened to me. But that never happened on keto. And keto, I would feel slightly lower strength. I wouldn't be able to get it. I honestly didn't progress as quickly towards my strength goals. And I did have that stalling or carb creep problem the entire time. So I was just like, my energy is wishy-washy and a couple other things personally. But I'm highly insulin resistant. So you can take that with a grain of salt if you wish in terms of your particular circumstance. But just straight up, that is my experience. I think that carnivore is a better overall approach. It's a better overall way of eating. It's easy to track. After the initial difficulty of getting used to the new food groups you're eating or lack of food groups you're eating, it is very easy to stick to and comply to. Its compliance is helped by a consistency of results over time because you won't really hit things like stalls. Initially speaking, you will hit a stall eventually. Every way of eating will hit a stall eventually, no matter what your goal is and where you're starting from. But that's pretty easy to adjust because literally all you need to adjust with carnivore is things like how much you eat and when. And once you do that, you'll progress towards your stalls. You'll break through stalls like crazy. Whereas in keto, you'd have to do a hell of a lot of troubleshooting to figure if you want to stay in that way of eating and progress past stalls. So overall, there's like a multitude of reasons, but they're very subtle reasons. And multiple reasons I don't think carnivore is better, but they're very subtle. So that's how I pretty much want to end this video. Is I want to say that both ways of eating I've done. I recommend both to clients. I recommend the carnivore diet because I'm part of MeatRx, but even outside of MeatRx, I would recommend carnivore primarily. If you're choosing between the two, if you're down for changing your life drastically in a big way, go for carnivore. If you want to slowly wean yourself off things like pasta, go for keto. Both are fine. Neither are a bad way of eating, in my opinion. However, carnivore is, in my opinion, better, especially for weight loss and body recomposition. But then there's a whole other suite of things like autoimmune issues that can also be treated with carnivore. However, that can also be treated with keto. So that's why I didn't really bring that into this discussion yet, because that's more like the elimination of foods and it's beyond the scope of this topic. It's already gone for 22 minutes. It's more I wanted to go over. But anyway, there you go. Differences between carnivore and keto. Carnivore, not all insulin is bad. It can be awesome for you if you have body recomposition, strength goals, and in addition to weight control or weight loss or gain goals. For keto, it is easy to transition to, and it has more variety. There you go. So thank you for watching this episode of The Lean Yak. Hopefully I didn't waffle on for too long, and hopefully you got some insights from that. But I'll see you next time. Peace.